Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, coming to you on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live, so you can download our free app and stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. Can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today, and it's really a high honor for me as I continue to stretch the lineage of all musics to connect with cats that come from a serious line of musicians and have continued to create musical vocabulary on the bandstand in their own fashion. And I get a chance today to talk to a prolific cat, a guy who's been steeped in rhythm for many, many years and has been entertaining live audiences in the southeastern part of the United States and maybe all over the world for many, many years. Zion Godchaux, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me on.
It's an honor to have you, man. I just wanted to ask you, in your mind, how you specifically, because you create a lot of music on an individual level, outside of the construct of like a quintet or a sextet or a big band kind of thing, how do you try to create new musical vocabulary on the bandstand?
Well, are you talking about live?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, yeah, not in the studio, but I mean the idea that that you are adding to the lineage of the music that you are making. Where did it start from? What did you get off on originally, and how have you taken that music and expanded that vocabulary live?
Well, obviously I was, very influenced by the Grateful Dead in the way that they approached their concerts, the way that they would, improvise in the moment live. And that was just kind of a understanding that was kind of innate in me since, I can remember, just because of, what I was exposed to early on. And as I grew up, I played instruments, played guitar. I was really into songwriting. And, at around, I'd say I was probably 21, in the mid-90s, I was living in San Francisco and ended up, a friend of mine, took me to a rave. And before that, I didn't really think much about electronic music.
Right.
Thought it was kind of like elevator music. And, I was a purist, I'd grown up around purists and considered myself one. I wasn't an incredible musician by any stretch of the imagination, but, live music and live instrumentation was what I truly believed in. And, and I didn't really think much about the electronic stuff at that time. And, ended up going to my first rave, and I was able to see something going on at the rave, with a single DJ mixing, house music with a big, electronic kick drum on the sound system, just thumping this whole warehouse, and everybody kind of under its hypnotic pulse, and thousands of people all like just right with that pulse, silly elevator computer programming, and I saw that there was room for some sort of augmentation of that with live, live instruments. Like if just this one beat, this one, kick drum is providing this pulse that everybody can tap into, you know, and it's a sequenced, you know, say computer generated, you know, time coded pulse. Well, what if, you know, a live instrument was able to get on top of that pulse that was essentially a quantized perfect rhythm, and you can kind of use that perfect rhythm as a you know, fulcrum point to push and pull and create, you know, variations on this pendulum swing, and actually maybe make it swing even harder, you know, with a live instrument on top of it. And so anyways, at that moment I had, that was like the great light bulb, was that, you know, the perfectness of the beat in a sequenced house, you know, context, would provide like this stable, solid ground from which to pivot on with your live instrument, and it could be extremely powerful. Quite the opposite of what I originally had thought. And so anyways, like I said, that was like the great light bulb for me.
Can I ask you though? This is, you're very well articulated. It seems to me like whether in the womb or coming out, I mean, you were already like steeped in your own internal time feel. Like you had rhythm, basically. I think we all have our own individual rhythm.
Yeah.
But would you say that like the perfect, I don't know what the word you just used there, the perfection of the bass drum, one of the things I love about the Dead, especially with the double drummers, is just time. The tempo can speed up and slow down. Nobody was really uptight about it. It does drive some people crazy in the live context. I think it's fantastic. But did you, in the midnight before that, in your musical experiences, had you struggled finding to be able to play with human being trap drummers? I mean, did you find that the rhythm was synced into what you had always kind of wanted?
Yes. You know, I had reggae bands that I had kind of formed before I got, you know, turned on to the house music scene. I'd had my own, you know, bands with drummers, other, you know, bass players, instrumentalists, and yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic thing to be able to improv with another live player and communicate, you know, on that level. And I really, to this day, you know, really enjoy playing with a live drummer, you know. I think part of what I'd seen, you know, that night at the rave was that this solid, perfect kick drum gave the audience a solid place to hang their hat, so to speak, for that night.
I dig.
Where they knew where that rhythm was going to be. There was no question. They could relax and know for the duration of that night that beat was going to be right there, so they could, you know, they could continue on with their own mystical experience, knowing that groove wasn't going anywhere. And so there, you know, that part of it is what makes that, you know, late night house stuff so powerful. So it was, in my mind, it was kind of like giving both and, like, you know, everybody wants to be able to just relax and know that groove is going to be kicking perfect and swinging, but then also add like this live instrumentation that isn't set, you know, it isn't perfect, and it can kind of weave its way in and out of that perfect groove, and the concert goer will get kind of the best of both worlds. They're going to get that solid thing they can, you know, dance to all night, but also this layer of the unknown, the just the live. From personally, it would be like I play the guitar over it, but this kind of live guitar that creates together with the beat creates kind of something different in my mind. It kind of brings it back into like a rock and roll setting, where it's that kind of rock and roll energy, but it's got that thing that you can just kind of sit back and know that that beat is going to be right there. To me, I thought it was bigger than just the beat alone. But going back to what you're asking, like about the drummer and the live drummer and stuff like that, like really, I think my ultimate idea was to have a band be able to play that stuff, not even need the sequenced drum machine beat, but actually have a drummer be able to like lay it down like that, right?
Absolutely.
And have a bass player to that was my original vision. Was, wow, okay, I see what this rave is doing. Well, what if we have a live band, do this kind of music and get a drummer to like lay down that beat. And what I found was that like players that are that good, who can truly play that tight and really give that kind of truly solid backbone beat, that the crowd can rest on all night. Those guys are hard to find, and when you do find them,
yeah,
they cost a bunch of money.
That's a very good point. Yeah, go ahead.
Rehearsals cost a bunch of money, and keeping the band together is difficult, and miking the drums every night to where they sound full and thumping and encompass the sound system properly is a thing. And I was living in San Diego. Sorry if I'm like talking too long about this.
No, I'm just having a ball. Just keep riffing as any way you want.
Okay, cool. Well, I was living in San Diego, and I was trying to find players, to make this music with me. And I put ads out in the newspaper, tried to have, friends hook me up with friends or people who I knew who played, and I've made, fairly valiant attempts, at making it purely organically, with other, live players and stuff. And I just couldn't get it tight enough to where it would have that effect that I saw that night at the rave. I couldn't find players who could, especially at that time, even see my vision. Like they're like, what? Most musicians at that point were, had under the same kind of impression that I was before I went to the rave. Well, this is like elevator music, And so even trying to get them to see the vision and play and understand, how, keeping it super simple and fat, the whole time without going off and trying to do your solos and all that was actually really a cool thing. And I just couldn't find other players who shared my sentiments. And so I eventually just, decided that I was just going to be a one-man band. I would just get a drum machine, sequence the bass lines, sequence the drums, create basically the backing band, and then just play on top of it. That was the best I could do, with what I had, in order to see that vision, come to light. And so that's, I eventually just started making my own tracks, playing them on the, synthesizer slash drum machine live, and I would kind of make the changes live. You know, I would um, uh, let's see, change the different sections of the songs live while I was playing the guitar, and then that was kind of working, and I could see, okay, this at least works. This at least is making the party go off. It's giving me room to improvise over, and there's all this space in between these kick notes and sparse bass lines. There's all this space now for me to like infuse the live improv guitar, and there's a lot of power in that, in the space. There's all this power, and that space is hard to come by in a live band. And so I realized that I needed it just exactly how I was hearing it for it to work for me, and then hopefully work for the crowd. And I just kind of went, off in that direction. I was just making my own tracks, bumping it at the party myself, and eventually I met Russ Randolph and showed him kind of where I was coming from, and he got it. And I figured, well, if he's willing to take over the drum machine and sequencer, and I can just focus on writing and playing the guitar and singing live over it, and he can actually keep the train moving down on the track and going from song to song. He can worry about that. I can just worry about weaving within that even better, and I don't have to worry about making the changes myself. That would be something that is a realistic thing. Like, I could have Russ come on. He would basically be the other member of the band. He would kind of be the band, and with two people, we could improvise and weave in and out and go wherever we wanted to, on a dime. That meaning that, like, Russ would have like all of these tracks that we have created. He would have them all at his fingertips, so that he could mix in and out of the tracks and weave parts of the tracks in with the other parts of the tracks and make them new each night. And I, in turn, would be like in the moment, pushing and pulling my guitar against that beat and affecting the feel of the pendulum swing. And so that's kind of like the power of what we do, I think. And it's I guess a mixture of like what I've learned when I was a kid about improvising in the moment in this set list and feeding off of the crowd, and where all of that is at, as well as the modern electronic house trance mysticism that's going on there.
How now that
it was a marriage, anyways. Okay.
No, it's there's quite a few things going through my head right now, but what was it like now that house music has gone from essentially maybe what was considered elevator music 25, 30 years ago, it's completely in vogue now. How have you how has it grown for you in your own way? How, like, I guess going back to the beginning, like, how have you expanded that the verbiage on the bandstand in that sense? I mean, do you find yourself being somebody who's now that it's, I guess, more popular, how have you tried to continue to keep your individual voice in that music?
Well, I think that what we've done is a little different. Even where it's at today, it's very prominent. House music and electronic music and EDM is very prominent nowadays. But Um, we still, even so, like at a boombox show or whatever, it's still a unique thing because of the approach, because like of the particular way of improvising over the beat. Um, it's, I'm not saying it's the best thing out there or whatever, but it is a kind of a unique approach, even still.
If you could explain to the audience, I would really love you to explain how it's unique. I mean, is it the sense that there's nobody else that's playing instruments over? I mean, I just explained that how it's unique to what has become, like you said, very trendy music.
Well, first of all, they're still, these songs are wrapped, or these tracks are wrapped around, songs usually, that could almost be played on an acoustic guitar. Um, and it's uh, it's approached from a rock and roll standpoint, as far as like what I'm doing, the way that I am swinging the actual beat, with the guitar, and giving it kind of a backbeat, you know, um, groove, um, that that is not pre-rehearsed at all. It's it's totally in the moment, and it's electric and gritty, and uh, it's um, it's a certain, we achieve like a certain type of swing at our shows, a certain kind of way that the pendulum moves,
Really?
that moves the crowd. Yeah, it's just, like every, part of it is just, everybody's unique, on Earth. Everybody, there's not two of the same people, and so the swing is going to be a little different with our style, but um, it's it's more of electronic music being turned back into rock and roll, um, and I just don't see too much live weaving of instruments. I mean, I know that there's a lot more of that going on as far as like, hybrid bands and stuff like that. Um, but it's almost as if they're uh, tr- trying to sound like an electronic band, or um, trying to sound like the popular music of today. And what we're doing is, we're just playing our songs, with that are that we're using the beat as a way of amplifying these songs and turning them into rock and roll, but still giving the solid beat. And it's just a particular way of weaving and swinging that pendulum that I think makes what we do still its own thing today. I think it's why people still come to our shows. Um, I've listened to what's going on nowadays, and try to stay on top of it, but when it comes down to it, like, I'm a songwriter, and I write what I hear in my head. That um, I feel is like unique to me, and I try to bring those things out live, and try to see these tracks through to the live dance floor. But by the time they get there, it's more of this, you know relatively unique combination of flavors, that I just haven't seen still that any, much of that, like I said, there's live bands and hybrids and stuff, but I haven't seen anybody, looking at it quite like I do. That's all I know.
Well, I mean, I mean, it's not just rock and roll. I mean, you're incorporating a lot of different sensibilities into your live performances. But I'm curious about, um, you owned your first drum set at age 4. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Who did, I mean, how did that come about? And how did you, I guess, being that the rhythm is so important for boombox and what you hear in your head, I mean, what were you, when you got your first trap set, how did you, like, with your own internal heartbeat, which is where the rhythm always comes from, did you find yourself having perfect time? Were you a little bit in front of the beat, a little bit behind the beat? And I would love if you could talk a little bit about, if anything, people like if Billy Kreutzmann gave you any lessons or advice as to how to be yourself playing drums, and then ultimately how that, being a drummer at that early age, how that's impacted what you hear in your head as it relates to the beat now.
Yeah. Well, I think it, the band had a huge influence on me. Probably a lot even before I was born. You know, my mom sang in front of the wall of sound. You know, for the first 8 months that she was pregnant with me.
Wow.
And so
Wow.
that had to have, like,
That's
yeah,
insane.
that had to have, right?
I don't even, I mean, that's so far beyond, like, just playing like, like folk clubs or something. That wall of sound, that was, you were
Yeah,
definitely,
like,
dancing in the
every
womb. No
night,
doubt about it.
for my first, 8 months in the womb was, right in front of the wall of sound, or, if it wasn't there, it was at a rehearsal, and so that music was just constantly in front of me or around me, and um, and then when I was born, then my folks really opted to take me with them as opposed to leaving me at home, when they would go on the road. And so I was always around it, at least for that first part of my life. And Mickey and Billy had given me a drum kit. They had taken a floor tom and turned it into, used the floor tom as the kick drum, and kind of built me a little kit,
Oh my, that is unbelievable.
And
That's classic.
so,
God, that is classic.
yeah. And also on top of that, there was a lot of time spent at Mickey's ranch in those days, where he had this barn that was filled with drums, and he had this cat that was living on the property. His name is Arshad. He was a Indian.
Yeah, Arshad Syed. I actually did a Facebook Live interview with him in Fremont earlier this year, if you can believe that. Badass Indian.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I've vetted this really.
I would love.
Yeah, Arshad is a bad. I'm going to send you that video. You're going to die. I can't believe you. Go ahead. So he was there working on the Digga Rhythm Band stuff.
I would love to reconnect with that guy.
Oh no, you're gonna. It's gonna go down immediately. It's gonna go down immediately.
Showed me.
Yeah. Explain how.
I haven't talked to him since those days.
This is unbelievable.
He showed me with hand drums where rhythm was at.
Wow.
And it's funny, I haven't really even thought about this for a while. But he showed me how to hit the drum, how to move around the rhythm with the drum, and kind of sent me on my way. I have these memories of this glowing human, transferring information to me. I was little. I was 4 years old, 5 years old. But so in my mind, that's kind of what it, seems like in retrospect. It's just like this glowing being just giving me some information.
He's still glowing, by the
and
way.
he
He's
was
still glowing. He's still a
is he
beacon of light, dude. I mean, I
so
cannot believe that.
so my memory is not
No,
my
it's so
memory's
tripped out
serving
because
me.
I just didn't. You know what it is? You were born 74, and I mean, he was really, to me, in my own world. I was born in 78. I'm just in some sort of fantasy world on my trip, but he was at doing the Dig a Rhythm Band stuff, like 75, 76, in that general range. But I mean, I cannot wait to send you this video, because he's playing this stringed Indian instrument to start. He wasn't even playing hand drums in that video that we did. But
Wow.
I mean, still just like I mean, the guy was. It just warms my heart that Zion was, because that barn. I mean, listen, I've interviewed Healy 4 times. I've interviewed everybody in that Dig a Rhythm Band. They all used to come in there and play till all. I mean, Zach here would say that sometimes they'd play for 4 straight days without stopping. So there was a lot of really amazing rhythm going on in there, and it blows my mind that
Yeah.
he really worked with you, because he did say he lived there for a long time. I think he actually lived in the barn for a while.
Right, right, right. Yeah, that sounds about right. Like he was just there, you know. That's all I remember was that there was this cat named Marsha, and he,
I love it.
you know, and so like I'm like little, I'm just like I'm just cruising around trying to occupy my time while the band is doing what the band does, you know. And so I would always kind of orbit around the barn. I mean, I got crazy stories of stuff around that barn. But anyways,
I mean, we might need to vet. No, I mean Healy said they used.
I would
Yeah.
always go in.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I mean just Healy said they used to go. This is maybe or before your time, or around when you were born. But they used to go down and shoot rifles down there and blow up Weir's amps and things like that. And I mean, they played Cowboys and Indians with Quicksilver. But yeah, I mean, at some point, I'd love to hear some of those stories. But continue, please.
But yeah, specifically about the rhythm thing, you know, like I would find myself in the barn, you know, look at all these drums, like look at all this, and being like that, I had been exposed to such a concentrated rhythm uh, uh, situation, I guess. It was already a second nature thing to me, and so then all of a sudden I go in this barn and it's like, look at all these drums, look at all these tools, and
Love it.
then there, you know, so then there's Arshad, you know, and he would just be kind of hovering around the barn, you know, and anyways, so he showed me a bunch of stuff, and kind of told me where it was at, so to speak. And then you know, with Billy and Mickey, of course, they were super supportive, and would, you know, they made sure I had a drum kit, and just being that close to that music and being around Billy and his groove, you know, that's kind of part of who I am. I don't even think Billy had to actually like tell me anything. Like, he told me stuff every single night in his own way, you know.
Could you give an example of the nonverbal? Part of my show is about leadership, but nonverbal communication. So could you give an example of?
Well, just the way that he played, just you know, just having to listen to him, you know, play every night, listen to both of them, and what they did and how they played, and like, you know, that was my instruction, you know. It wasn't, you know, as much words as it was, you know, action, and so that thing, you know, is the tightness of the rhythm and the notion of dancing around the rhythm is really what I got a double portion of, when I was a kid was those principles, dancing around that rhythm and creating a push and pull swing, around that rhythm. It was something that just is a second nature concept to me. Maybe that's why when I got to that warehouse and I heard that big beat, it was second nature epiphany, like duh, you know, let's weave through that. And I bet that's gonna crush, the party. Um,
Well, no, I mean, some of the most ferocious. It's funny. It's just really funny because a lot of people would say. I mean, there's no one. I never saw the Grateful Dead. I've never seen any of the iterations of the bands or anything like that. But I only listen to live early '80s. Like it fluctuates. But this one amazing thing is that the year the Dead took off. In '75, your folks put together this ferocious band. It was just the Donna Keith band, and they played all over the country. And I'm looking at, they're playing like jazz. They're playing, and Billy's the single drummer on it. Your dad's playing keys. They got this kind of unknown. Steven Schuster's playing horn. Your mom's singing. And they had this wild bass player. I can't remember the guy's name. They were playing folk country, and then they'd throw in like Freddie Hubbard's Little Sunflower, like the funkiest jazz tune ever. And I've never seen Billy play that funky and jazzy in my life. And I'm like, my God, Zion was like an infant when this stuff was going down. I mean, it was just, you really were just, when I talked to Brian, he said that your dad, it was so natural for him. Music came so naturally. He often didn't express it through words with him. It was just sort of explanation through, like you said with Billy, it was just through rhythm and through music. Did you, I guess, could you just talk about your relationship with your father and, ultimately his legacy as it relates to music? I mean, I interviewed this drummer, Mike Clark, who was Herbie's drummer with the Headhunters, and he's telling me he had a jazz fusion trio with your dad in '67 up in. It just blew my mind. I mean, your dad was really a wide open cat, and I think that, it sort of everything happened the way it happened. But just from your point of view, I mean, how did he mentor you as just as a teacher?
Well, I was 6 years old, when that car crash happened. So I only got, a little bit of time, with him. And those were crazy days, So the time I would treasure, the time that I would get with him, just like one-on-one, but it was, kind of few and far between. Like, I don't really have any memories of us, discussing music per se, or, I was, just hanging on for dear life, to the train.
Yeah, I mean, let's be clear. Zion was 6 years old at this time. I mean, that's the age of my youngest daughter right now, and I mean, do the memories do you have?
The name of the game was just not to get lost, So
right.
real quick. So like, my dad, like he was incredibly gifted musician. He obviously, but he let's see, he took this music aptitude test when he was in grade school, and his music teacher was I guess my dad's did so well on this, like he tested like genius level, and it upset his music teacher. Actually, his music teacher got jealous about it. Um, but that, that just kind of out the gate, like my dad, like just out of the box, is a really high capacity for
Wow.
apparently comprehension, music comprehension, and improv skills just out of the box. And so his dad, my granddad, was a conductor. He was into classical music, and he was also a tenor singer, and like in opera. And he taught my dad the kind of the nuts and bolts of just playing the piano and playing classical music. And my dad, so from a really early age, my dad just kind of got it. He somehow he just understood it, and could play like Chopin and these different composers, and that's kind of really what he was into as a young child, and then got into jazz. By the time he was, I guess, 15.
He was doing these gigs at Yosemite, these jazz gigs at that time.
Yeah. And so he could play over anything. He didn't need to study per se. He, like I said, like out of the box, he could comprehend. He had a vast capacity to comprehend, and it just, he took it into the jazz realm and then beyond, and so by the time that he joined the Grateful Dead, he was he took all of that, and applied it to that particular sound organization. He was able to just jump right in, to those waters and swim, because that's what he'd been doing, basically up till then, Anyways, he's like super heavyweight for sure.
Do you
and it's really unfortunate that that the business and just that lifestyle really kind of got to him, But
no, I mean, it just, part of it was also like the lack of, everyone was sort of self-policing themselves in that band. So again, eventually, Heart of Gold band would have been something very special. It was curtailed, but I think that your dad, when I watched this video, he just makes it look so effortless playing music. He's not rushing. He's creating space within the music. Do you feel that you talked about from your earliest days learning from the Grateful Dead about how to play off the audience and improvise in the moment? Did that improvisation did it start with the rhythm section?
Yes.
Can you explain that concept and how you interpreted it, and then ultimately how you try to improvise in the moment with, for lack of a better word, being sometimes a one-man band?
Well, I said it kind of started with the rhythm. It for me, that's where it started. But when you're, at least the way I look at the rhythm and stuff, when you have like a simple rhythm going, and then you add like offbeat with a different tone of the drum, it's rhythm, but it also becomes melody. The other drums that you're adding, there's still tones, and so it's it became an interchangeable thing. Rhythm and melody became, almost, you know, the same thing. Different rhythm over, or a different accent over a rhythm could be played with a horn or a conga drum, but it all became just kind of, a rhythmically based thing. Even the melodies, it's not the melody, it's the rhythm of the melody.
That's right.
And and uh, so it really, that's kind of, I don't know if I answered your question.
Well, no, I mean, are you speaking about
that's
the? I'm just talking about when you would see, especially the band the Grateful Dead live. I mean, what was that whole emphasis driven by the rhythm, that they were primarily the ones driving that in the moment improvisation through that rhythm?
No.
Break it down. Okay, break it down. That's what I want to know, because I never saw it.
In my mind, I think that they all followed Garcia for dear life,
Right.
I think that Garcia would be out front, flying and uh, taking sharp corners, and they would attach to that and create, like, almost like a, one of those Chinese New Year's dragons, that has like three or five people on it, that are all connected to each other,
Absolutely.
And Garcia, though, he was that front dragon that the rest of the band were able to, follow and create this large organism that wasn't just Garcia. I think that the rhythm is a huge part of that, for the band. But I think that, as far as the Grateful Dead was concerned, at least from my perception, it started with Garcia. That's where the train started moving. Each night, specifically, like when they would walk out on stage, the drums filled in, even though the drums may even kick off the song, they're following that the head dragon.
I love that analogy. I mean, did your parents take you to Egypt?
Yeah. Egypt.
And what was?
Yeah, I witnessed that one.
And you were about 4 years old.
Mm-hmm.
How much? Tell me a little bit about. I mean, maybe it's self-explanatory. It's so funny because I interviewed the drummer Denny Sywell, who was up at I'll get the name of the place where your parents recorded that epic album, and in 1975, and Elliot Mazur's studio. That's what it was, and I think that. Why did they choose to name you Zion? What's the meaning behind that for them?
Well, let's see. Basically, at the time that my mom got pregnant with me, it was like a pretty intense time for the band and for my parents, and they were on the road all the time. The lifestyle was really, potentially not conducive to having a kid.
Absolutely.
My mom and dad, specifically in the situation that they were in, were, considering, like, maybe we shouldn't, maybe we should not, like, try to have a kid right now. And my mom, says that it was during, the time period when they were trying to, decide what to do, that like this voice or, something just came through and said, his name is Zion Rock. And
Wow.
at that moment, my mom said, "Well, I guess we got to have the kid, and I know what his name is." And so that's as simple as that. She had no, like, you know, no Jewish background or any kind of religious. It had nothing to do with anything religious or her trying to be hip or cool or weird or hippie or
Rastafarian kind of thing. Yeah. I mean, it was just came
it
to.
had nothing to do with anything.
So important to know that. Yeah.
She had no idea. She probably never even, like, you know, spoken the name before ever. You know what I mean? Like, she wasn't really into that. She wasn't into all that. And so it just came through the pipe from somewhere else, she says. And so, yeah.
I want to play you. We have a game on this program called Name That Voice. I don't expect you to know the voice, but I do want you to listen to the content, and then we'll come back and break it down.
All right.
Was just considered the most safe and loving place anywhere, and so I grew up at Grateful Dead shows and all those other bands, New Riders in the Purple Sage, and all of our extended family. Those musical events always felt completely like a safe place for kids. So I had full run of the place. I was one of the oldest kids too. So I was one of the first little rock and roll babies in our group. So I was kind of head of the show there for a little while, and I get bossy and I run all the other little kids around. And so there was like a little scene. It wasn't, I see now that is kind of unusual, but at the time it felt totally natural because we're like a traveling circus and everybody travels together. It's just natural that you bring your kids, your dogs, the whole works, because your home is the road. And so you have to bring what you want in your home with you. And so that went for a while. We went on the road a lot. And but later in time, as there was more kids and things got a little bigger and crazier and the road was longer, I think we stayed home more. And then later in time, Annabelle would just go out on the road with Jerry by herself. And but that was, she was 12 and it was considered, okay and safe. Like there was a group. It was like a huge village that would look after your kid, And so, I used to just run around in those big halls, at 4 years old, out in the audience, trucking around by myself. I knew where the stage was. I knew how to find my folks. I loved running around and having a good time and getting into mischief and tripping the spinners and doing whatever I could to have fun.
How? You have any idea who that is?
Is that Trixie?
She close. It's Sunshine Kesey.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And we did our interview. That was an interview I did with her 2 years ago, and just I wanted you to talk about is there anything close to that today in terms of, this is more of a sociological question, but the fact is that I'm sure at 4 years old, you were doing the exact same thing and running around. It
is the same thing.
Exactly. And we've gotten so far away from that as a father of two kids. I actually try to give them as much space as possible, but it's almost inconceivable at a quote unquote traveling circus, even though it was the most warm and loving place in the world today, to see the idea that you would actually allow 4-year-olds to be running around a crowd. do you look, I mean, looking back on that, did that shape you and your freedom just on your point of view of life and how you create and how you, and the zeitgeist that you hold? It was just the freedom that of being on the road with this unabashed freedom, like she said, tripping the spinners. To me, it's just completely magical. And I just would, having some perspective and now being a musician in your own right, I wonder how those experiences impacted your own view of the world.
Well, it definitely, man. There's this crazy echo that has developed now on my phone.
You sound perfect, but if it's annoying,
I sound all right.
You sound, yeah. There's no echo coming
There we
through.
go. It stopped. Maybe not. Maybe not. It's still going, but I'm going to try to.
You sound good though. I'll let you know if it's booming around.
Yeah, I had like too much, or I had a lot of freedom, at that age. Basically, I've almost raised by Hell's Angels, and they were kind of like hardcore cats, with filthy mouths and just we could kind of do whatever we wanted, as a group, and individually, and as a kid, like Sunshine was saying, we could just kind of run around, and we knew where the stage was, we knew where backstage was, we knew how to get around, just as little kids, and we were able to roll like that. Once I started, having to go to like regular school and take orders from my teachers, and society, which was definitely not what I was used to. It was a struggle, like I didn't like being told what to do by my teachers. I think I even had, in, what was it, second grade, I think one of my teachers had tried to tell me to go to the office, like go to the principal, because I was maybe acting out or something. And I remember, I don't know if you can swear on your show.
Oh, it's go right ahead.
Straight up, like, yeah. I just, I told the teacher to just like fuck off, right in class, and
I love it.
Like, because in my mind, this guy didn't know what did this guy know? Like, I had just been, grown up around the most intensely interesting, crazy, intelligent group of people, and I just wasn't gonna hear it from this guy. And he like, picked me up and like pushed me up against the wall right in the middle of class, and that kind of set the stage for my, like, that was kind of like the, whoa, okay, this is, you're gonna have to readjust to the way that everybody else rolls, because the life you've just been living, that's like a completely almost separate universe that that you can't just like bring into normal society and think that everybody's gonna play by those same rules. And so it was a little difficult, there was a learning curve getting into like regular society. And so as far as musically goes,
I mean, I guess what I'm trying, what it is, because I want to do part two with you. I'm short on time, but I want to know okay, so the guy was giving you some petty thing, and it was like, are you kidding me? Like, I've been through a lot of stuff, and it wasn't even an ego thing. It was just like, why are you doing this, man? This is so petty. But how have you tried
Right.
how have you tried to at least keep some of that essence in the live Zion Godchaux show today, if at all? Just that freedom, that sort of.
Well,
yeah.
That's the thing, is that it's part of me. It's like,
Right.
that's like at my very internal master programming in my brain, you know. So that I don't think that's ever going anywhere, you know.
Right.
I just have to like learn how to adapt to this world now, you know. But like my instinctual programming is freedom, you know, of moving in the moment. And on stage, that's what comes out. That's when I'm truly my true self, is on stage. And it's that initial programming all is being, you know, applied on stage just naturally, you know. It's almost like when I'm on stage, that's where I can revert back to who like I truly am.
And when you see that, and when you see those 4-year-old,
you see, for better or for worse, but go ahead.
No, I was just saying, like, it must bring a smile to your face when you see a kid with reckless abandon running around at a show of yours, you know, to know that that's still there. There's so much helicoptering of parenting going on now. And that to me is the coolest part.
Right. And I have a 10-year-old boy now, you know, and I bring him to some of our shows and, you know, some of the festivals, and, you know, it is a different time though, you know, like, I make sure that there's somebody, you know, keeping an eye on him.
I dig.
You know, I want him to experience it all, and you know, one of my ultimate hopes for my son is that he'll know where that is at. You know, he'll know where the Grateful Dead was at, and be able to experience some of that. You know, at the same time, though, you know, I want him to be safe, and I can't help but have been affected by all of the, you know, missing kid, you know, milk carton pictures, you know, and which, you know, kicked off in the early 80s or whatever, and you know, so I want him to be safe, but I also want him to be able to experience it as much as possible.
Zion, you made my day.
He's at least got somebody like looking after him.
No, listen. It's the times we live in. We're exposed to information instantaneously. All we hear about are these horror stories. I'm sure that they were going on at that time too. We just weren't fully interconnected. And you know, you were there. You know, it seemed like that, like Sunshine said, the safest place in the world, and the Grateful Dead shows, and just to be able to give him a taste of it is key. And you know, I'd love to pick up and do part 2 with you at some point. I really had an absolute ball. You made my day, man. I really, and I'm definitely going to hook. I'm going to get Arshed. I'm going to get you his number. You better call him. You better hook back up with that guy, because he is still cooking the groove, man.
Yes, please do. Please do. I would love to be reconnected with him.
100%. And it was an honor to connect with you, man. I hope you had a good time.
I did. I really enjoyed myself. Thank you.
Right on, dude. I'll get you a copy.
Well,
yeah, let's do it again, and I'll get you a copy of this later.
Let's do it again.
Yeah, man, let's do it again, baby. Much love to you, Zion. Have a great day.
All right, man. I really appreciate the call.
Much love. Take it easy.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye-bye. Another one for the books. Zion Godchaux, doing his thing. Boombox, solo, you know, heavily influenced by the Grateful Dead, which his parents were part of. And now he's creating his own voice on the bandstand. He's doing it prolifically. We'll be back tomorrow. Until then, this is the Jake Feinberg Show. Peace.